All right, so you've thought about how much uncertainty there is, and let's say you feel like there is a lot of uncertainty around this decision, right? You do not feel comfortable making this decision. Well, what are the strategies you can pursue to try to reduce that level of uncertainty? Well, there's a few things that you can do, and I'm going to actually give you 4 strategies. 3 of them are about actually reducing uncertainty. One is about just kind of reducing your own sense of uncertainty, which is obviously not as good of a thing, but it's certainly something that plays into the decisions that people make, okay? So number 1, you can just try to get more information, right? Say, okay, I don't feel like I can make a good decision based on the information I have right now, so we need to do something to gather additional information, right? Whether that is launching intelligence operations, whether that is doing surveys, whether that is going out and reviewing more data that's already out there, whatever it might be, right? I'm saying to my advisors, I can't make a good decision based on what I know right now. We need more, right? Whatever way is appropriate to this particular situation, let's go out and gather more information and then come back, okay? The second thing is that I can say it's not about the amount of information, it's about getting more independent sources of information, right? Maybe I have a couple of sources that are highly linked to one another that have provided me with a ton of information, right? But now I feel like I need to check that, I need to verify that by seeking out different sources of information that are independent from those ones that we have. Let's pursue some other avenues to learn more about this question than we have before. Okay. And the third one, again, way that you can actually reduce uncertainty is to wait until you're closer to the time when a decision absolutely has to be made. Because any decision that we're making where we're projecting what's going to happen into the future, the less of the future there is to project, right? The more information we have, the less uncertainty, right? So if I tell you right now, if I give you my guess as to, for example, what the outcome of the 2028 presidential election is going to be, then I could make a guess right now, right? I'm going to feel more confident about that guess, about that prediction, if I wait until, for example, I don't know, we actually know who the candidates are, right? As we get closer, we'll identify who the candidates for each party will be, and that'll give me more information that'd be really useful in making that prediction, right? As we get closer, we'll start to see more about what the economy looks like in the United States in 2028, and that would help me, right? I can make guesses, I can estimate what those things would be, I can guess who the nominees are going to be, I can guess what the economic conditions are going to be. I can guess all sorts of things, right? But the closer I get to election day, the fewer of those things I have to actually guess, right? We start to fill in those blanks, right? Not just guess what they are. Now, all 3 of those ideas, get more information, get more varied sources, wait until closer to the time so you know more of the events that are going to happen. Those are great so long as there's not a deadline where you actually have to make that decision now, right? You often don't have the luxury as president of saying, well, let's just wait, right? Let's see what happens and then we'll decide, right? Both for practical and for political reasons, there's a lot of pressure to act sooner rather than later, right? I mean, if you wait longer, you have a better sense, but maybe more damage has been done by whatever the problem is you're trying to solve, right? And you didn't do anything to try to solve it sooner. You're going to take some responsibility for that damage that's been done because you decided to just wait, right? And politically, of course, saying to the public, well, I just wanted to wait and be more sure is probably not a winning argument in your re-election campaign, right? Vote for me and I will wait around to see what happens. There's never been anybody's campaign slogan that I'm aware of running for major office in the United States, okay? So these methods of reducing uncertainty can be valuable, but they're also kind of luxury items. Right? It's got to be a situation where it's either not pressing enough, it's not politically important enough, or the effects of the problem are far enough down the road that it's not going to really hurt you to wait. It's not going to hurt you to gather more data. It's not going to hurt you to look to check everything. Right? There's not that pressure to act now. But many issues that presidents face, those things aren't true. Right? There is that pressure. There are those consequences that are ongoing that you want to be able to, act on now and not just hold on and wait and hope. So what else might people do to reduce their feeling of uncertainty? Not the actual level of uncertainty that exists, but their feeling of uncertainty. Well, this is where kind of strong sense of ideology plays a big role for people, right? The more that people have a strong belief system about how the world works, the more comfortable they become making decisions based on incomplete information. Right? And so for presidents, most often it's ideology that we're talking about, but it could be any sort of belief system that you hold in your life that is shaping, you say, well, you know what? This is the right thing to do. This is going to be the effective thing to do. This is the important thing to do. And then it doesn't matter as much that you don't have much information, because you can find a little bit of information that supports that worldview. You say, okay, see, I knew that was going to be the case, and I'll go with it. Now, that kind of sounds bad, and in a way it is, right? I mean, we see extreme examples of this all the time, right? If you've ever looked at social media of anybody ever talking about politics at all, about any issue, doesn't matter what it is, you can find lots of examples of people who are just very, very sure of themselves, right? I don't care what side of the issue you're on, I don't care what issue it is. They believe they know it all, right? And they're happy to tell you that they know it all, right? And those are not really useful conversations to have, right? So I don't ever argue with people online, because there's no point in arguing with people online, all right? But on the other hand, having at least some measure of that confidence in your belief system is essential, because a president who is just bogged down by indecision eternally is not going to be useful either. Right? We don't want somebody who's going to run off a cliff because they believe that's the path and it's the path and it doesn't matter what you say. But we also don't want somebody who's never going to leave the starting line, because they want to make sure they're going in the right direction and they can't ever know enough to know, right? So as with many things, we want some happy medium there somewhere, right? We want somebody who's got enough of an established belief system, enough of established ideology that they can take limited data and an uncertain situation and still come to a decision. Because if they don't come to a decision, they actually are coming to a decision, right? If you don't ever act, what are you deciding? You're deciding to do nothing. As I said, nothing is always one of the options. And sometimes nothing is the better option. But we would want people to choose to do nothing after making, considering other options and deciding that no, nothing is actually the better option in this case, rather than just allowing indecision to turn into a choice to do nothing. All right, questions about that? All right, well then, if we're given, this situation, we have to make an important decision, right? And we're operating under conditions of uncertainty, right? What do we have to consider? How do we go about making this? And there's a few things that we need to think about, some about the situation and some about ourselves. So I'm going to start with one about ourselves, and it's, I will just say, at the outset, talking about this particular class. So I've only ever taught this class, only ever intended to teach this class previously as a regular face-to-face class. And that's because it was set up to be a very discussion-driven class and a lot of activities along the way, which are hard to do when the vast majority of the students are online. Okay. I mentioned I only intentionally taught it face-to-face because I was actually teaching it The last time I was teaching this was in the spring of 2020. So it started out as a face-to-face class, and then halfway through the semester, it switched to an online class, and I had to make some adjustments on the fly. But I say all that to set up, so one of the things that I would do at this point in the lecture with a classroom full of students is we play a game. So I'm just going to describe the game to you because it doesn't work without enough people in the class. But I'm going to explain the game to you and then tell you why I do it and what the impact of that is. So number one, the first time we play the game, I say, okay, everybody take out 3 sheets of paper or 1 piece of paper and tear it into 3, doesn't matter. Have 3 things to write on, right? I'm going to write down a number between 1 and 100, and I want you to guess what it is, right? And pass them in, and I'll look through. If anybody guesses the number that I picked, right? You get the exact same number that I picked, that person gets 5 points, bonus points on the midterm exam, okay? And so, of course, when I do that, everybody's anxious to do it, because who doesn't want bonus points on the exam, right? And there's no reason not to do it, right? It'd be silly not to put in your guess, to try, okay? Then, the second round, I say, okay, same thing. I'm going to pick a number between 1 and 100. I want you to guess it. But now the rules have changed a little bit. Now, whoever's closest gets 5 points. So you don't have to be exactly on point, right? You don't have to guess it exactly. You just have to be the person who guesses closest to the number. You get 5 points, or if 2 people are equally far away, they both get the 5 points, right? But if you put in a guess and you're not one of the people who is closest, you lose a point on the exam. And the moment I say that, a bunch of people in the class go, ooh. And all of a sudden, they have to start thinking, am I actually going to do this or not? Am I going to put in a guess or not, right? And think about how that changes, because if, let's say, a bunch of people say, okay, I'm not going to risk that point on the exam, and so they don't put in a guess, well, that's better for the people who do guess, right? I mean, if in the extreme case, only one person puts in a guess, that person is guaranteed to get the 5 points, right? And so you have to think about that. Well, what are other people going to do, right? Are other people going to put in a guess? Or are they not going to put in a guess, right? Am I willing to risk 1 point for the hope that I might get 5 points, right? But people start to there's some butterflies in some people's stomachs when we're doing this, right? Then I get really mean. So then the third time I say, okay, we do the same game. I'm going to write down a number between 1 and 100. You guess it, okay? Still, whoever is closest gets 5 points. Anybody else who guesses and isn't closest loses a point. If you don't play, and somebody's within 5 of the actual number, then you lose 2 points. If not, if nobody's within 5, you're fine. You don't lose anything, right? But if you don't play and somebody else guesses and they're within 5 of the actual number that I picked, then you lose 2 points for not playing. And now particularly the high achieving students in the class start to have a nervous breakdown, okay? About potentially losing 2 points on the exam, and people start to ask me if I'm really going to do this and how could I do this, and right? People get very upset at me, okay? And just to kind of, first of all, spoil the ending, when I was doing this, I actually would give the bonus points. I didn't actually take the points away from people's exam. I didn't tell them that till it was done, right? But what I'm getting at with this game, the reason we do this is that one of the things that impacts how you act under conditions of uncertainty is whether you are more risk averse or risk acceptant. Okay, people who are risk averse shy away from risk, right? Risk makes them uncomfortable. In a gambling situation, they're more likely to think about what they're going to lose than think about what they can gain, right? People who are risk acceptant are just the opposite, right? They're more focused on what could come out of it that's good, what they could win, right? What benefits they could get, then they're worried about what they could potentially lose, right? So, I mean, if you ever go into a casino, right, and just watch people for a while, it's not hard to figure out who's risk averse and who's risk acceptant, right? Like the people who are really, really risk averse don't even walk into the casino in the first place, right? Whereas the people who are super risk acceptant are like going all in on the poker table with a crappy hand, right? Because they're like, maybe I'll bluff everybody else and I'll win all this money, right? But it's different to hear somebody talk about that than to actually experience that first, right? All of those people who were like that, by the time I got to that second game, they're like, I'm not putting in, I guess I cannot risk 1 point on the midterm exam, even though I could win 5, right? I can't do it, right? And then there were those people who they were like, let me write my number and throw it in there. I could get 5 points, right? I want that 5 points. Well, it plays out like that in the real world all the time, right? Some leaders, some presidents, very comfortable with risk, right? They're so focused on what could go well, right? They don't worry about the potential costs. And some people are so worried about what could go wrong that they can't take much of an action, right? But it's also, but I also structure the game that way because in the real world, it's not just a choice of whether you play or not, right? Because what happens in the game could affect you whether you play or you don't have to play, right? So you sit out, right? So if you were, say, the United States and it is, the lead up to World War I and you don't really do anything, right? It's not our problem, it's a European problem, and you get dragged into the war anyway, right? Well, you're not doing something may have contributed to the losses that you had, right? Maybe involvement earlier, or certainly this argument's made with World War II all the time, right? Maybe if the United States had been more involved, we would have prevented World War II from happening. Don't know that it's true, but at least that argument's made, right? So it's not just about if I play what happens, it can also be about what happens if I don't play, right? And so that's why I kind of structure it that way. So sorry none of you got an opportunity to win extra points on the exam, but hopefully the point gets across anyway. All right, let me pause again, and then we'll come back and wrap the last few points up.